1800, the fighting ships of Imperial Spain patrolled the California coast. The few ports and bays of the frontier were forbidden to all vessels not flying the Spanish flag. But the tempting wealth of this land had been rumored afar. A stealthy, illegal trade with New England was developing. Swift little Yankee schooners sailed dangerously west around Cape Horn to hunt sea otters and to trade Yankee manufactures with the friars for Spanish doubloons. Small schooners like this one fed the starving haciendas when the Mexican Revolution of 1816 to 1820 isolated California. When Spanish rule collapsed in 1822 and trade restrictions were forgotten, the great sea route had been established. Seaborne trade with California became vitally important in 1849. With the discovery of gold, Easterners sought any means of reaching the West Coast, and entire families braved the sea route. The lingering brilliance of the clipper ship era, which produced the smartest sailing vessels ever built, has obscured the historic role of small schooners. In 49 alone, 775 schooners, ships, barks, and brigs streamed their logs out of East Coast ports in the race for the gold fields. A wooden quadrant, weighted so it just floated, anchored the line in the water. When a rag marker passed the stern, a 28-second sand glass was flipped. The marks on the line bore the same relation to 1 sea mile that 28 seconds do to 1 hour. By counting the markers or knots passing in 28 seconds, the ship's speed was determined. Thus, the term knot was added to the language. It remains the world's standard of sea speed, meaning 1 nautical mile or 6,080 feet per hour. The fastest clippers sometimes logged 22 knots. 90,000 seaborne emigrants passed through the Golden Gate in 1849. But steam, by land and sea, was already closing the sailing ship era. The hardships of a Cape Horn passage were soon to become nearly forgotten tales of a dim past. But sailormen and sail die hard, and a century later, for the last time, old Gloucester rang to the music and bustle of a stout ship refitting for a passage around Cape Horn to California. This is the 85-foot schooner Wanderbird, probably the smallest vessel ever to make the Horn Passage. Sails are her only power. She is owned and commanded by Captain Tompkins and manned by a crew of 9, including the captain's family. The ship is rigged like the earliest California-bound vessels from New England. She is a 2-masted schooner. Below decks, too, she is similar to those ships. Food, tons of it, are stored in the forecastle under the anchor windlass. 5 tons of coal are under the floor for cooking and heating purposes. Harrison the cook rules in the galley, just forward of the compartment where he sleeps. William the boatswain shares this forecastle. Julian is carrying chow from the galley into the main cabin. Where trading ships carried cargo, Wanderbird has a long main cabin lined with bunks, uppers and lowers. Here is a wonderful swinging table. Charlie is studying navigation at the big table. 30 tons of iron ballast are stowed under the floor. Water tanks holding 5 tons of water are there also. as well as one above on deck near the two small boats. From the deck house, where John is reading, a winding staircase leads to the chart room. Here the skipper spends much of his time over his charts. The chart room adjoins the captain's cabin, where his wife, Gwen, is doing some shipwifely job of sewing. The cabin smells pleasantly of hemp and tar and paint, because it is next to the bosun's locker, which is the ship's storeroom. Bar and the bosun are keeping watch on deck. Below decks, a fireplace and a stove keep the living quarters warm and dry. The ship's youngest sailors, Anne, age 6, stands lookout at the crosstrees. And her brother, 4, nicknamed the Commodore, is on the jib boom. As the schooner stands out to sea on the ebb tide, Captain Tompkins turns to a new page in his logbook and writes, Gloucester. Gloucester toward San Francisco. We stream our modern patent log off the reef of Norman's Woe and begin counting the 17,000 miles which lie ahead. Standing to the eastward, we overtake a Gloucesterman. Her crew admires our speed as we show her a clean pair of heels. Our course is southeasterly, along the old clipper track. The ship demands constant care. From rope yarns, Bosun William and Barr fashion baggy wrinkles in an unending struggle against chafing. Yarns deftly knotted on a double line form baggy wrinkles. To protect sails and lines from wear, this gear must be rigged wherever there is friction aloft. Chafing gear is the hallmark of a deep-water vessel. Paint protects the ship against sun and spray. Work of a different kind occupies the Commodore. In the captain's cabin, he and his sister Anne wrestle with school problems under the patient eyes of their mother, Gwen. All three are veterans of many earlier voyages. Blow high, blow low, school must keep, at sea as well as ashore. 8 bells. Relieve the wheel and look out. A 4-hour watch. The school teacher and her students take over the deck. A schooner is the finest playground imaginable. Thrills and adventure wait one at every step or misstep. In the main cabin, the counterbalanced dining table swings freely, leveling against the ship's roll. Eating from this table sometimes is a problem, meals being either at chin or knee level. In the galley, Harrison concocts his tasty meals. No finer sea cook ever lived. To round the bulge of South America, we have sailed 2,000 miles to the eastward.
Hereabouts, we pick up the northeast trade winds, and our course becomes due south. And now our square sails are flung to the steady favoring trade winds. Square rig is more efficient than a schooner's fore and aft canvas when the vessel is running free. "20 days out, noon observation gives 0 latitude, and King Neptune climbs aboard to hold his royal court. A good run to the equator has dropped the pole star below the horizon and raised the Southern Cross ahead. Woe to that newcomer to Neptune's court who has tied slippery knots, reported late for watch, or used lubberly language. Not fancying such a shave and bath as John is getting. 2 sailors, smart for their years, take to the masthead. Doldrum skies, humid air, fickle, shifting wind. The boatswain holds our head to the south as we squeeze past Cape San Roque. The binnacle shelters the steering compass. This is the most important of all navigation instruments. Riding in its gimbals, it remains steady and level despite the ship's motion. Daily before breakfast, I wind and compare my chronometers. They keep the time of Greenwich meridian, from which we reckon our longitude. Sunny skies alternate with sudden squalls. The cloudburst yields fresh water. All hands pitch in to scoop up the precious drops. It takes 4 days to win through 1/2 such squalls into the refreshing, reliable southeast trade winds of the southern hemisphere. Suddenly, without warning, the schooner is amidst a storm of waterspouts. We crack on all sail and race through these evil twisters. Such storms in 1849 left 1,200 Yankee gold hunters stranded in nearby Rio de Janeiro, survivors of vessels dismasted or sunk in these waters. Rio's jumbled peaks rise from the sea, march by, and are lost astern. Now only the children are carefree, heedless of the test which lies ahead. For the rest, there is work to be done. A stitch in time, in pleasant weather, may say far more than merely 9. We fashion a score of stout canvas oil bags, stuffing them with oakum. The edges are roped for strength. Each new day is cooler. From afar I feel the chill of the horn. 30 days ago we crossed the equator. Today we are in latitude 50 south, at grips at last with Cape Horn. From 50 south here in the Atlantic, west around Horn Island to 50 south in the Pacific, this constitutes a rounding of Cape Horn. These are the hardest 1,000 miles in any ocean. We are met with a disarming gentleness. We ghost lazily across a glassy sea. Albatross and Cape pigeons keep us company. A baby seal investigates our intrusion. In the crystal clear water, a sinister shadow rises from the bottomless blue. A 16-foot tiger shark. His escort, the pilot fish, waits hopefully for scraps from the killer's meal. Sharks have always been fair game for sailors, young or old. A young albatross, felled by a collision with the rigging, sulks for my camera. Then he is returned to his ocean. It is November, spring in these grim latitudes, with snow whitening Tierra del Fuego and the thermometer below 40. High overhead there is a keening, augury of impending gale. A line squall arches the western horizon. Tiger swift, the first horn gale bears down upon us. 6 o'clock, cat's paws on the calm ocean. Wind and growing swell. 6:15, Cape Horn, 10 miles distant. The frightened dawn retreats into darkness. 6:30, a full gale. Scud shrouds the horn. We'll not see the Cape again. We are being driven far south. To the sufficient danger of these screaming winds, I envision the dreaded menace now of floating ice. The sea is overpowering. We must heave to. Bosun, secure the jib! "60-foot seas lift us and fling us down their faces. In the grip of nature's fury, I run the schooner off before wind and sea. Violent surges fight for the wheel, and a man's life hangs on every turn. Up and over, and we ride it out. Heave tight on those gaskets. Break out the storm oil. Oil on troubled waters is no empty idiom for us, but sound sea practice dating from Bible days. It is a miracle 1/1,000,000th of an inch thick. All the menace of these waves is in their tumbling crest, solid water flung by hurricane winds outracing the seas. Fish oil, stinking, sluggish fish oil, greases the water, depriving the wind of its friction on the surface. We use 3 bags, a quart of oil to each. In these frigid waters, the oil will seep slowly through the canvas. The oil slick glistens to windward. Where it gleams, the seas no longer break. Behind her fragile shield, the schooner rides in safety. When the sun breaks through, sailors can skylark a bit on deck, steep enough for tobogganing. The zigzag track on the chart tells our story. Gales drove us down to the cold 60th parallel, but happily we sighted no icebergs. Seas, current, and gales hung steady in the northwest. Came 2 days when we made only 24 miles and lost 60 to the night violence of a hurricane. Dawn exposed the terrible coast close aboard, and we ran south again for sea room and our lives. We spent 28 days south of 50, sailing 2,300 miles to make good that hard 1,000 miles around Cape Horn. After 20 days and 50 gales, only youth's quenchless vitality could thus mock the Horn's brutality. For the rest of us, the storm-racked ship has provided motion enough. Oil again, on dying seas of our last gale. Changing weather, and wind at long last. Wind from the southwest. Wind fair for San Francisco. We slack sheets and drive hard for 50. Rail down, the bird runs 246 miles, noon to noon. We fly across 50 south, heading into milder latitudes, and pick up again the southeast trade.
Lay aloft and set the topsails, you sailormen!
We cross the line once more, entering the North Pacific. Leisure now for fun off the bowsprit, in the sparkling bright blue water. Leisure now for the Commodore to apply lessons learned in a hard school. The average sailing time from the east around Cape Horn to California was 130 days. We are completing the long haul in 120 days. Bright flags identify us to the Coast Guard lookout. Behind the Golden Gate, a city which has seen the coming of many great ships looks down from its hills at our arrival. We glide quietly into the broad green bay. The last of the Cape Horners have completed their voyage.